But this one kind of landed in our laps by just fortuitous luck. But through my friendship with a wonderful writer and actor called Donal O'Kelly from Ireland, who first put us onto the story of Jimmy Gralton and his hall. And of course, when we discovered that Jimmy had actually travelled the world and then had come back and then had built this hall with his own hands, with his own mates, and challenged the church and the landed estates all around him, we just thought it was a place that was just bursting with ideas and life and mischief. And I think that's you're always looking at for a story that, it's got different levels to it, where lots of ideas can come into it, but they're not forced, they kind of flow organically. And so the hall was like a character, and it just felt it had that lovely mixture of meat and mischief, which is always very attractive, and Ken was equally enthusiastic, and Rebecca, our producer.
We auditioned over the period of a couple of months, but it's all improvised auditions with Ken. We didn't get the script. We didn't really know what we were auditioning for, and we were getting more information as we went along about Jimmy Gralton, and I think everybody was Googling him by the end, going, who is this guy? And we knew it was about a dance hall in Leitrim in the 1930s. And then it was just all about improvising with different actors and different groups over the period of a couple of months. I met Ken on 5 different occasions.
The public events are as accurate as we can make it. And for example, when Jim and the community marched back and restored an evicted family into their home against the wishes of the landlord, that was a true case. It was the same name, the Milner family, and that family still lives in that house today, 80 years later. So you have to be accurate at that level.
Jimmy Gralton isn't something that's taught in the history books in Ireland. They covered it up quite well. And we did research when we got first of all, Ken asked us to read a book called The Cause of Ireland by Liz Curtis, just to get our heads into that sort of time and the politics of that time. And then after our dance training, we went to Ireland and we did 2 weeks of research about Jimmy Gralton, and there was Donal O'Driscoll did some history lectures with us and things, so that we found out, and we watched a documentary that they made with his relatives in the 1980s, which was never aired. So we were learning more about him, and then by the time we started filming, we sort of had a good idea about him. But it's not obviously there's a lot of the film that isn't true. My character is fictional, so it's not a biopic as such either. It's just based on his life.
Yeah, they had to imagine a lot of it because there's very little information or factual evidence in existence. No, I was doing loads of extra dancing lessons because I was very slow, and it was terrible. It was like being the kid doesn't get picked for the football team. I was like standing there, nobody would dance with me for
in
ages.
Classes.
Yeah, and then one girl said, "Why don't they just use a double?"
Well, enjoy it, and tap your feet to the music, and realise it's possible to challenge those in power, and you don't have to do it with a long face. You can do it with a smile. But there are Jimmy Graltons all over the country engaged in campaigns. There are lots of Jimmy Graltons. Find them out, join in. It's possible to challenge the rich and powerful, and you need to.
And I think what's interesting too, talking to a lot of the journalists in Cannes, especially the ones from Latin America and Greece and Turkey, they understood that the idea of a safe, free space where you can think and talk and meet in safety, analyse power in your society, that's not something that's quaint and rustic and consumed by history. It's actually a very live and important issue, especially when so many of them are under pressure. Some of the journalists we met from Greece, they had the Golden Dawn, the right-wing fascist party knocking the door. These are the same people that were threatened to cut the ears off teachers if they teach immigrant children. Or the Turkish writer who spoke about 2 people being shot the day before she interviewed us because they were demonstrating. So this idea of a space where people can meet and challenge power, freedom is very, very fragile, and we have to defend it. And we've seen, the huge contradictions thrown up now by the recent elections. So it's very, very interesting times, and people have to get together to be organised to look after each other.